Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and in today's video, I want to talk to you about quilt patterns and the fabric choices that we make for them and how that can be the difference between a quilt that we're happy with and one that we're disappointed in. And I have a lot to say about it, so stay with me. So not surprisingly, I have a lot of opinions about quilt patterns and fabric choices. If you have watched one single video of mine, you probably have figured that out already. And if you haven't, welcome. I have a lot of opinions about quilt patterns and fabric choices. And really, often it's not about the actual fabric choices, it's the colorway. And so the colors of the fabrics that quilt pattern designers use, or that their pattern testers use, or that we quilters use. And I have done videos called Great Quilt Patterns. In them, I often talk about this pattern is great because it works with any colorway, in my experience. And so sometimes the actual piecing geometric design that's created may not be, well, there's nothing new under the sun, but may not be that crazy original, but it's just really pretty. And no matter what you put with it, it looks great. And I've done several of those. The Magnolia from Chelsea Stratton is one. The Quilty Stars from Quilty Love is one. And it just seems like no matter what fabrics you throw at it, it just looks great. I am just someone who, when I see quilt patterns, so it's the quilt pattern designer's choices and their pattern, there's something in me. I don't know if I'm just have a rebellious streak, a mile wide, but I'm like Frank Sinatra. I did it, Mom. I want to put my own stamp on it. I typically am not really interested in recreating what someone else has already done. Even if I think it's lovely, I just kind of want to tinker with it and put my own mark on it. And that's good because I use shorts from the thrift store. Maybe not exclusively, but largely. And so I'm often putting my own colorway together. And that's how I discover, oh, this pattern is amazing because I did something radically different from what the designer planned, and it works, and I love it. The quilt that I'm going to be referencing is the Birch Point quilt by the Blanket Statement. I loved the Birch Point quilt version that she did. And to me, it's like you go, oh, it's so pretty. And I had cut up a whole bunch of shirts to make binding strips. I did a video to find out how much binding can you get from one shirt, which TLDR, a ton. Like you can do almost any quilt binding from almost any size shirt if it's a large or above. But I had all these 2.5-inch strips, which is jelly roll or binding. And I challenged myself to do like a jelly roll quilt or jelly roll friendly quilt. And the Birch Point quilt is one of them. I understood the assignment. Our youngest says that, oh, Mom, you understood the assignment. It has a light strips, and then you need light to medium, and then there's a dark strip section, and then dark mediums at the bottom. And the dark strips go up into the light strips, and it's part of what makes it so interesting and have so much contrast. So I'm going to show you that. And I did a video about this actually, about the fabric pull for this, because I really struggled finding the right fabrics. So here it is. Here's the quilt. And so I had the lights, I had everything but the navy and the kind of interesting, well, we'll get to that in a minute. It was just not working. And I realized, oh, what I'm missing is the dark value. And so once I figured that out and then found a navy that worked with the colors that I had already chosen, it kind of came together pretty well. What I said we'll get to in a minute. A minute has arrived. It's a periwinkle and cornflower, almost like a cherry blossom. It has a very Asian feel to it. And I just found it at a big box fabric store and loved it and bought it and put it in it and was like, amazing. I love it. And I really like it. I don't want to say that I don't like it because I do like it. But to me, it does not even hold a candle to the beauty of the Blanket Statement original Birch Point quilt. And briefly, the story of the quilt is she was at a lakeside cabin that's in their family, and I guess walked outside in the trees with the sunset, and it was just beautiful, and she made this quilt. And I love that story. I love the quilt. It's so pretty. And the pattern is actually really clever, and it's not very difficult, which I love. And it's pretty easy to do with shirts, which I love even more. And again, I'm not unhappy with this quilt. I think it's very pretty, but it is not as pretty as the original. It has been improved greatly with the custom quilting that I had done on it. I have been working with a new long arm quilter to me, Laura, of Crafting Quilt Designs. Gosh, Laura, if I butchered that, I'm so sorry. A while back, I was like, I need some long arm quilters, and Laura reached out to me, and several people did, and I'm not done giving other people work, but Laura reached out to me and then kind of reached out to me again, which was great. And so I was talking to her, and I was like, I really want you to just do something artistic with this, because it actually is a pretty minimalistic quilting pattern design. And so she did some beautiful feather-like scroll, and she started at the golden and tracked from the gold to the navy, so like this, where they connected, and then down to the end. And she did that in every row. And then in between those rows, she did, I think it's called sachet, and it's just an open kind of curvy design that is a little less dense and kind of makes the feathering really stand out. And she did a fantastic job. It's really, really pretty. And she did it in this thread color called, I said that funny, thread color. And it really tied it in beautifully. And while I'm talking about the quilting, I'm going to flip it over. The back is actually secondhand fabric that one of my patrons and friends gave to me. It's actually charcoal or black Essex linen that is amazing. And she had some extra, and so she sent to me, and I just didn't have quite enough to do the whole back, so I did that cherry blossom in periwinkle print down the middle of the back. And I loved the back, and so Laura did her custom quilting, and then I got it back. And if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen I was struggling with what to do. Not really struggling, I didn't give it any thought, but I was like, what am I going to do with the binding? And I happen to have that mustard yellow, I had that mustard shirt laying on my cutting mat, and was like, I think that will go beautifully. And I think it goes beautifully. And so it kind of tied everything in. And because the sand colored thread on the back can almost go yellow, it ties that together and kind of makes all of it make sense together. So I'm actually really pleased with it. But again, I don't love it like I loved the original. And I thought a lot about that. And this is back to the very first thing that I said, which is, what makes a quilt so beautiful? Is it the pattern, or is it the colorway? And sometimes the answer is yes. It is. And I hate it when my husband does that to me. I'll say, do you want Mexican or Italian for dinner? Yes. Wait, what? No, pick one. Sometimes the way a quilt pattern and the colorway that the quilt designer chooses it's like the perfect combination. And you can do it not with their fabrics, but you might not be as in love with it as you are. So if you've made a quilt and you get the whole thing done and you've chosen fabrics that are different from maybe what the quilt pattern designer did, and you're like, I'm just not happy with it. First of all, not alone. So if you're feeling like, and I don't think any of us are going, ooh, that's an ugly quilt, but just it's not as pretty as I wanted it to be or expected it to be, or had hoped that it was based on the original design. And it's because sometimes those original designs are so intrinsically linked to the colorway that they are inseparable. And I think that's the case with this quilt. So I have long been an advocate of choose your own fabrics, go to the thrift store, pick what you like, make your own quilt, put your own mark. It's unique. It's part of what I love about quilting with shirts, because nobody is going to make the exact quilt that I make. I mean, you could do yellow, white, navy, blue, turquoise, and white with blue on it, and it won't look the same because you won't have these fabrics, because these are shirts that I found in my area. And that part I love. But sometimes what I'm saying is I understand maybe the value in a quilt kit. Like if you want to make what somebody else made, or if what somebody else made maybe can't be improved upon, or maybe putting your own mark on it results in a quilt that's not quite as lovely as the original. And so that's great. And to that point, I want to show you something. You guys probably think that I never buy fabric from the quilt store. If you've been with me a while, you know that I do. But I have a quilt kit. I have not touched it yet. And we're on the second take of this statement because I haven't touched it yet, and I brought it out and rubbed the box and made so much racket. So let me show you. It is the hole punch dot quilt. And when I told Paul that I wanted to make this quilt, this was a gift for my birthday. Same time as the fabric bundle, by the way. And he goes, I'm shocked that you want to make a quilt that is basically the quilt designer quilt. And I said, I just don't think I could make anything. I don't think I could improve upon it. I don't think I could make it better in any way. I don't have a vision for something different. I just think it's gorgeous. And I would love to have that quilt. And he said, okay. And so for my birthday 2 years ago, he gave me this quilt kit. And so I guess what I'm saying, let me put this back and I'll try not to do all the, I just can't help it. I just touch all the things. I think it's easy to get into an either or mentality. Like I either use shirts or I buy a quilt kit and recreate what someone else has made. And that somehow one is more creative than another, or one is prettier than another, or one has intrinsically more value than another, either because you may be in the camp like, well, this person had this vision and I think that's gorgeous and I want that, and that's intrinsically more valuable than I love that pattern and I want to do my own thing with it. And I think we all are on some part of that continuum, but I think it's not an either or. I think it's a both and. I think that there are plenty of quilt patterns out there that have so much room for every colorway under the sun, and you can really explore color and fabric and come out with a gorgeous quilt. Now, whether it's better than the original, I guess that's a debate for another time. But you can really do that. But then there's also a place for, I love that quilt and I want to make that very quilt. And that's okay too. And sometimes, like the Birch Point quilt, it's so beautiful and so thoughtful that it's just perfect just like it is. And if you want to make that quilt, make that quilt. And so if you want to go back and make the original quilt pattern designer's quilt and recreate that, you can do that later. That's great too. I mean, if this isn't quilting, we are always adding to those quilts that we want, more and more to the list of quilts we want to make. I hope this has been helpful. Just food for thought about when the quilt pattern and the colorway are perfectly matched, playing with color and a quilt pattern to get your own thing, and making the quilt that someone else planned because it's really lovely and you just want to have that lovely quilt. And all of that is just the beauty of quilting. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thank you so much for watching.